1. Get clear on what fluency means. You know that you want to become fluent in English, but what does that mean? There are two parts to fluency: knowing the language and knowing how to produce the language. Being fluent means that you can use the English language comfortably. You can communicate freely, and you can have conversations with native speakers without having to constantly look for help. Fluency can also be seen in how you speak. You can know plenty of English vocabulary, but if you have to pause or repeat a lot when speaking, your fluency might not be so obvious to someone. If you speak very slowly or in a very flat, unemotional manner, then you won't sound very fluent either. On the other hand, sounding fluent doesn't mean you actually are speaking good English. To be fluent in English, you need to master both the language and how you speak it. There's often an expectation that you must know a certain number of words for fluency, but it's important to remember that you can't just study the words and grammar. It can be scary, but you'll also need to practice speaking. The tips below will help you master your speaking skills so that you can speak proper English and sound good doing it. Don't forget how important both features of fluency are. 1. Immerse yourself in English every day. Studying English for an hour once a week isn't usually enough to make any real progress. The best way to quickly improve your English is to spend at least a few minutes practicing every day. There's a special language learning method called immersion. With immersion, you try to surround yourself with the language as much as you can in your day-to-day activities. You want English to become part of your daily schedule so that you're frequently learning and practicing until it becomes natural to hear and speak the language. You can create immersion in a lot of fun, creative ways, besides just constantly studying English from a book or a course. You can switch your phone settings to the English language, start watching and listening to English movies and songs, keep an English diary, or volunteer in a place where English is required. Immerse yourself in English as much as possible. Every time you study, challenge yourself to listen to, read, and even say things in English that you think might be too difficult for you. If you want to speak English fluently, you need to make it an essential part of your everyday life. Watching authentic movies and videos can help with this by exposing you to the natural sounds of the language. 2. Accept that English grammar has a lot of exceptions. Sometimes you can find patterns in English grammar, but other times, English doesn't make sense at all. For example, why are read pronounced read in the past tense and read pronounced read in the present tense? Or why is mice the plural of mouse, but houses is the plural of house? Unfortunately, there are many exceptions to English rules. It's easy to get stuck on learning how to speak English properly if you try to find a reason for everything. Sometimes English is just weird, so the best thing to do is just memorize the strange exceptions and move on. 3. Use mirroring to answer English questions. Listen carefully when someone asks you a question in English, and you'll answer perfectly every time. English questions are like mirrors. Does he? Yes, he does. Can she? Yes, she can. Is it? No, it isn't. If someone asks you a question and you're not sure how to answer, start by thinking about the words used in the question. The person has already said most of the words you need to make your answer. Instead of just memorizing English grammar, start to look for patterns like this one. There are a lot of simple ways to cheat and make it easier to remember the right words. 4. Focus on whole phrases instead of single words. Speaking English fluently means being able to express your thoughts, feelings, and ideas. Your goal is to speak English in full sentences, so why not learn it in full sentences? You'll find that English is more useful in your everyday life if you study whole phrases rather than just vocabulary and verbs. Start by thinking about phrases that you use frequently in your native language, and then learn how to say them in English. 5. Learn intonation, body language, and gestures. True English fluency is about more than just vocabulary and grammar. If you can figure out intonation, body language, and gestures, you'll really look and sound like a native speaker. Intonation is the rise and fall, or tone changes, in how a person speaks. Body language is how a person uses their own body to support or go against what they mean. Gestures are hand and body movements that work together with what someone is saying. It's not easy to learn these three things because they seem very natural. One way to learn is to just watch how native English speakers communicate with each other. One way to study these aspects of the language is by hiring an English teacher, if that's in your budget. Another is watching YouTube videos if you can avoid getting distracted with other videos. Use speech to text for text messaging. You can practice speaking English even when you're texting people. Just speak your texts instead of typing them. You may need to change your settings to enable speech to text first, then find the speech option on whatever keyboard you're using. Often, you just need to tap a microphone icon on the right side of the keyboard. Start speaking, and your words will appear on the screen. No one hears you talk, but you still get practice. Pretty good deal, huh? But what if most of your communication is with friends and family in your native language? Microsoft Translator has a way around this. Check to see if your native language is included in Microsoft's Conversations feature. If it is, you can speak out loud in English and have your words automatically translated into text in your native language. Your chat partner can speak in your native language and have their words show up for you in English. This way, you get English speaking and reading practice while having the conversations you'd be having anyway. 7. Talk yourself through everyday activities. Think about all the things you might do that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. For example, following a recipe when cooking dinner or putting together a piece of furniture. Try writing out instructions for a process in English and make them as simple as possible. For cooking something, your instructions might start like this. 1. Peel the garlic. 2. Dice the garlic. 3. Peel the onions. 4. Slice the onions. Once you have your instructions, follow them. In the meantime, say what you're doing out loud. For example, now I'm cutting up the onions. Uh-oh, my eyes are starting to water. A more challenging version of this would be to keep an audio diary. Record yourself on your phone describing your day or a specific experience from beginning to end. This would force you to learn words that you often use in everyday life or think about, and you'll also get more comfortable with speaking smoothly. 8. Memorize and use conversation starters. You might miss out on opportunities to practice English speaking if you just can't think of anything to say. An easy solution to this is to memorize conversation starters or ideas for beginning conversations. You can find lots of these online. For example, here's a list of 250 conversation starters from Conversation Starters World. Of course, you wouldn't want to use all of these at any moment. It would probably seem weird if you just walked up to someone and said, "What 3 words best describe you?" But memorizing some ideas will help you feel better about talking to people in casual situations or to keep conversations going when talking to exchange partners. 9. Share your opinions online. To really learn English speaking, you need to learn how to express yourself in English. Even if you have ideas for conversations, it can be hard to know how to put them into your own words. You can practice this by participating in conversations online, posting on social media, leaving comments on articles, or writing reviews are all good approaches. Goodreads is a site where people leave their thoughts about books they've read. Writing about books and movies is always a nice way to practice sharing your opinions in English because they give you a lot to think about. But if you don't have time to do this, there are simpler options. Watch a short video on YouTube and leave a comment underneath it. Post short opinions on Twitter about anything. There are many options for practicing your English skills before you speak out loud. 10. Get direct feedback. To improve your speaking, you can ask directly for feedback since you usually can't do this with casual conversations. It might be worth setting up a language exchange where you can ask the person to tell you directly if any of your sentences sound awkward or unnatural. There are even apps for this, like GoCorrect, where you can connect with English teachers. HelloTalk also allows you to chat or voice call in English, and then your conversation partner will literally mark out your mistakes. For self-studying, you can work on your grammar and sentence constructions when speaking by typing out a simple message or paragraph. Try running this through Grammarly to check your grammar afterwards. Correct any mistakes you might have made, then try reading everything out loud. 11. Read along with podcasts. Podcasts and audiobooks don't just make for amazing English listening practice, they can help with your speaking too. Most of the top English podcasts have word-for-word transcripts. What you can do is download the transcript and then try reading the first few lines out on your own. Then play the podcast while reading along out loud, matching the speed and accent of the speaker. This is a handy technique called shadowing, which can really help with your intonation and pronunciation. Of course, choose a podcast that matches the type of English you're learning. This would usually be American or British English since you'll also have to imitate the accent. 12. Learn some English slang. While you should be focusing on learning standard English, it can be helpful to know English slang words and phrases so that you can stay current and understand modern English speech. Slang is always present, especially online, so you can't really avoid seeing it. Knowing slang, idioms, and other casual expressions can improve real English fluency because they can let you follow along with the kinds of conversations that happen today. 13. Look out for common pronunciation issues. While there's no single correct English pronunciation, if people have trouble understanding you, it'll be hard for you to speak confidently. There's no magic to improving pronunciation. You just need to learn the mechanics and then practice. It's all about how you move your mouth and use your lips, tongue, and throat. For this, you should watch native speakers while they're talking and observe not just what they say, but how they say it. It's also helpful to know about well-known pronunciation issues. Sounds like the and are difficult for a lot of English learners, but your native language has a major impact on your pronunciation. Try looking up the most common pronunciation mistakes made by speakers of your native language. 14. Pay attention to the sounds native speakers use. When most students listen to a native English speaker, they focus on understanding what all the words mean. This is definitely important, but there's a lot more you can learn from listening. If you listen closely to English speakers, you'll notice that sometimes vowels in English are pronounced as a schwa, such as in again and reason. This is called the schwa sound. It's the most common sound in the English language, but most English learners don't notice it, which leads to sounding a bit different from a native speaker. In English, words also aren't pronounced in a disconnected way. Sometimes one word flows into another. For example, leave it and no idea both sound like they have no spaces between the words. Native speakers do this a lot. Try to remember these details the next time you speak, and your English will begin to sound more natural. 15. Record your own English language audiobooks. When we think of practicing a language, we often think of putting ourselves in situations where we have to use the language. But the truth is, a lot of confidence and fluency come from actually speaking. This technique can help you do a lot more of that. Think about your favorite books. Even if you don't have any favorite books that were written in English, you can probably find some in English translations. For example, the Harry Potter series has been sold all over the world. Take any English language book that you already enjoy and record yourself reading it in English. This will take you a while, of course, but it's a way to practice your English pronunciation every day in a way that's fun and interesting for you. Once you finish recording the book, you'll have a homemade audiobook of it to listen to, which will give you a way to practice your listening skills too. 16. Record what you want to learn, then listen to it throughout the day. Use the same technique described above to learn English in general, while also practicing your speech. For example, let's say that you'd like to get better at talking to waitstaff. Maybe you see a blog post that includes 17 examples of English conversations to have in restaurants. Instead of just reading the post and trying to remember the examples, record yourself reading it. This will give you multiple opportunities to remember the material. When you first read it, when you read it out loud, and when you listen to yourself reading it later. 18. Think directly in English instead of translating. Stop thinking of yourself as someone who is learning English and start thinking of yourself as someone who speaks English. It's a small change, but it'll make you feel more confident and help you to better use the English you already know. This also means you need to start thinking in English. If you want to say the word apple in English, for example, you probably think of the word in your native language first, and then try to think of the correct word in English. Instead, try imagining a picture of an apple, and then just think of the English word apple. Real fluency happens when you stop mentally translating conversations. This is the biggest step from learning English to just being an English speaker. 19 specific language goals. Fluency is a very high level to reach and will take a long time to achieve, so becoming fluent can be a pretty unclear goal. Having such a big, non-specific target won't be helpful in planning out your studies. That's why you should think of more concrete and obvious goals that can lead you to fluency by themselves. They may seem like small steps, but altogether they'll provide a steady path in your English learning journey. Good goals should be specific and achievable. When setting a goal, you should decide exactly what you want to learn and how long you want to spend learning it. Here are some examples of good goals. Learn 30 new English words in 25 days. Have a conversation with a native English speaker this week. Learn to conjugate 5 irregular verbs before your next tutoring lesson. Perfect your pronunciation of 10 words over the weekend. Then ask a native speaker to tell you how you did. Make sure that the goals you set are reasonable and challenging enough to keep you motivated. You want to achieve your goals without overstressing yourself. Figure out your weak spots. You might find some parts of the English language are especially difficult for you. These weak spots can be anything: grammar, usage, pronunciation, sentence formation, and so on. It's important that you find out what they are so that you can focus on improving them. English does have a lot of tricky features, and some can be even trickier depending on your native language. Pay attention to what you're having problems with and dedicate more studying to it. You want to make sure you improve in all parts of the English language without lagging behind in any of them. 21. Don't be afraid to make mistakes when talking. Sometimes it can be difficult to put all those rules and words together into a simple sentence. Don't let the fear of saying something wrong stop you from speaking at all. Even if you think you're making a mistake, keep speaking anyway. Most of the time, people will understand what you're trying to say even if you make a mistake. Plus, the more you speak, the easier it gets, and the faster the right words will come to mind. 22. Record your mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but also make sure that you understand them. When you know that something went wrong in your English conversation, make a note of it in your mind, or, better yet, on paper. In your own time, study what exactly made you trip up. Did you use the wrong vocabulary? Was something pronounced incorrectly? Maybe you were using the wrong tense in your sentences. Mistakes are inevitable and necessary, but to lower the chance of repeating the same mistakes, you must learn and not run away from them. 23. Review and test yourself often. Reviewing what you learn is just as important as actually learning. Without proper review, you can easily forget a lot of previously learned material. This can greatly slow you down in your path to fluency because advanced English constantly builds upon basic, easier concepts. That's why you must frequently test your skills. You can review your learning in a number of different ways. Make your own vocabulary quizzes, do translation exercises, or have quick training sessions with a speaking partner. There are also online resources that you can use for review. You should also think about when to review. Maybe you want to review right after you finish a new topic, or after completing a whole unit of study, or maybe you want to be extra studious and just review every time you study English. Your reviews and tests will help you see your progress in English. Seeing how much you've improved can greatly increase your motivation to learn. Practice using new words right away. There's an expression in English, use it or lose it, which basically means if you don't practice an ability, you might forget it. This idea can be used to help you remember new English vocabulary. The best way to remember a new word is to use it right away so that it stays in your memory. When you learn a new word, try to say it in sentences a few times over the next week, and you'll be less likely to forget it. Sometimes you may learn a word or phrase that might not be immediately useful to you. It's okay to not focus on memorizing that vocabulary right away, especially if there are other, more important things to learn. 25. Expand your vocabulary with spaced repetition. Aside from using new words on your own, there's a trick to remembering English vocabulary for good and making your reviews efficient. Spaced repetition. With spaced repetition, you review words at increasing intervals. For example, after you learn a new word, you might review it after a day. Your next review would then be in a week, then 2 weeks, and so on. If you keep it up, you'll avoid a common pitfall, learning new words and then forgetting them. No need to keep track of this manually, too. There are flashcard apps like Anki that make reviewing automatic, and many language learning apps with flashcards already have this feature. 26. Learn basic grammar rules. Speaking English confidently also means having a good grasp of grammar. While you can pick up grammar just from listening and reading a lot of English, studying grammar intentionally still helps. You'll probably have to memorize irregular verbs, which aren't very predictable when they change tenses. Other tricky grammar topics include subject-verb agreement. For example, saying he smile instead of the grammatically correct he smiles. Here are other tricky topics that confuse even native speakers sometimes. Your versus your, I versus me, and few or less. Since it's easy to forget a new grammar concept, you can get it to stick faster in your mind with quizzes and exercises. Most grammar books, including English Grammar in Use and Practical English Usage, have exercises that you can work through. There are also tons of exercises and drills online about practically every grammar topic. 27. But don't worry too much about grammar. While you should still devote some time to studying grammar, don't worry too much about having to get it right all the time. The key to learning a language is finding a balance between studying and practicing. Speaking English fluently isn't the same as knowing perfect English grammar. Even native English speakers make grammar mistakes. Fluency is about being able to communicate. That's why it's also important to go out and practice your writing, reading, listening, and speaking skills in the real world. As you keep practicing, you can learn plenty of grammar rules along the way. 28. Get comfortable first with the English words you know. When you're writing and saying your own sentences, focus on using the words you're already familiar with. You may want to use more difficult, advanced English words to sound more fluent. But you should stay true to your skill level and keep practicing what you already know. Make sure that you're comfortable with the English you use instead of just trying out new, unfamiliar words just because you want to. Doing so can lead you to say incorrect or strange things. Of course, you do want to learn more and more words and skills to advance. We recommend studying a new word for a little while in context, in sentences and videos, before you use it in real conversations. 29. Learn from everyone who speaks English. You don't have to only learn English from textbooks and teachers. Anyone who speaks English can help you practice. Imagine how you'd feel if someone asked you in your native language how to pronounce something. Would you be angry? No, you'd probably be happy to help, just like most English speakers are happy to help you. If you know any English speakers, whether it's a friend or coworker, take advantage of the opportunity to practice and learn from them. Make sure to also ask any specific questions you have and be open to feedback. Hire a personal tutor. Sometimes you have to throw money at the problem. This common English idiom means that sometimes you have to invest in your future, and because this future is about speaking English, it may be a wise investment to hire a personal language tutor. It's like having a teacher to yourself for hours at a time. You can ask literally any question you want and get an immediate answer, and you don't have to follow a textbook unless you want to. 31. Make sure to use resources appropriate for your level. Tailoring learning materials to your own proficiency ensures that you're not overwhelmed by complex content or bored by material that is too basic. This approach promotes a balanced and gradual progression, allowing learners to build a solid foundation before advancing to more challenging concepts. Level-appropriate resources also help learners stay engaged and motivated, fostering a positive learning experience. By gradually increasing the complexity of language input, learners can develop their skills in a systematic manner, leading to improved comprehension, vocabulary acquisition, and overall language proficiency. Consider a big move. This isn't for everyone, I know, and there are many considerations you need to deal with before moving. But I can promise you this: there's no faster way to learn English than by being completely immersed in an English language culture. You've got lots to choose from. The United States of America, of course, but also the United Kingdom, South Africa, Australia, Canada, and plenty of smaller countries, too. Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Barbados, Dominica, Grenada, Guyana, Ireland, Jamaica, Malta, New Zealand, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Trinidad and Tobago, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and lastly, Trinidad and Tobago. First, pre-plan conversations that you'll need to have. Thinking ahead about potential topics, relevant vocabulary, and common phrases allows you to feel more confident and prepared during conversations. This proactive approach helps alleviate anxiety and enhances your ability to express yourself more effectively. Pre-planning also encourages you to anticipate potential challenges in communication, enabling you to strategize solutions in advance. Additionally, it allows individuals to focus on specific language aspects they aim to improve, such as pronunciation or grammatical structures. 34. Remind yourself why you want to speak English. If you remind yourself each day while you're learning English, you'll be much more likely to stick with it. So write it down, put it on your bathroom mirror or fridge, and think about this reason every day. Believe me, it works. Thanks for joining me today on Storybook English. If you found this lesson helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay updated with all our latest videos. Keep practicing, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Happy learning, everyone!